Hello, it's Sin here. One of my hobbies is researching and investigating criminal cases, so this kind of content doesn't bother me. But every now and then I read a story that really irritates my brain. The content of this post is made up of just such stories. Therefore, I must warn you about the content of this article. This post contains violent content and images related to cannibalism. Issei Sagawa, a Japanese writer, was born in 1949 in Kobe to a relatively wealthy family. As a child, he was small and sickly. He was a quiet and withdrawn child who spent most of his time reading. Issei discovered a host of flaws and objections within himself, a small, thin man with an effeminate voice, a man who, according to him, had never been noticed by women. These themes have created a strange interest in Isaiah, the desire to eat human flesh. He says that when he was in first grade, he once saw the thighs of one of his classmates and thought to himself how delicious his meat could be. This was the first time Issei felt an interest in cannibalism, although he did not realize it at the time due to his young age. Over the years, this interest in Issei grew and even changed. He was only interested in the flesh of beautiful white women. For the first time, at the age of 24, this dear student of English literature tried to make his dream come true. One night in Tokyo, he secretly enters the house of a German woman. He said he only wanted to take a piece of meat from her buttocks and take it home to eat. It was interesting that he said, "I wanted to do it so she wouldn't notice." Yeah, how? Honestly, I don't know. But Mr. Issei's misfortune causes the woman to wake up and start screaming. Security guards and police burst into the house and arrested Issei for attempted rape. But no one noticed that Issei didn't mean to rape the woman, he wanted to eat her. Mr. Sagawa doesn't reveal himself and confirms the rape charges. Naturally, his father quickly compensates the plaintiff and frees his little boy. Time passes, and 27-year-old Issei Sagawa enters the Sorbonne in France to pursue a doctorate in literature. He says that when he was in France, he would bring a prostitute home almost every night and try to shoot her in the back, but each time his fingers would freeze and he couldn't pull the trigger. Issei's search for his dream continues until he meets one of his classmates, Renée Hartevelt, a Dutch girl studying literature with Issei. Issei befriends her and invites her to his place for dinner several times on different occasions until he finally wins Renée's trust. He failed in his first attempt to kill Renée because the gun malfunctioned and Issei was unable to shoot her in the back. There is a quote from it that says, "It only strengthened my resolve to kill her," which of course worked. He killed her the very next night. On June 11th, 1981, Renée came to his home under the pretext of a poetry translation project. While she was reading, he shot Renée in the back of the neck. Issei was 32 years old and Renée was 25. He says he briefly considers calling an ambulance but gives up. He thinks this is the moment he's been waiting for at least 30 years. Immediately after killing Renée, he repeatedly raped her body. At first, he tries to bite off her flesh with his teeth, but says, "My teeth weren't sharp enough, that's why I went and bought a butcher's knife." Issei begins to eat the corpse. Quote, "I will never forget the moment I ate my first piece of meat. It was a historic moment for me." He later said that his only regret was that he couldn't eat her flesh when Renée was alive. "Nobody believes me, but my ultimate goal was to eat her, not necessarily kill her." During this time, he eats most of her face and breasts and stores the rest of her flesh in the freezer of his house. At every stage, he photographed Renée's body. This takes 2 days. 2 days later, he places Renée's remains in a suitcase and goes to the Bois de Boulogne in western Paris to throw the body into its lake. It's then that people in the park notice blood on the suitcase and call the police. The police come and ask Issei a question, and what's interesting is that he immediately confesses and says very calmly, "I killed her to eat her flesh." 4 days later, he was officially arrested. Issei Sagawa waited 2 years in a French prison for his final sentence. His wealthy father also hired experienced lawyers for his son. On the day of the trial, French judge Jean-Louis Bruguière declared Sagawa legally insane, dropped the charges, and ordered him committed to a psychiatric facility indefinitely. Sometime later, the Japanese writer Inuhiko Yomota came to visit Sagawa. This caused a stir in Japan and forced the French government to hand Sagawa over to the Japanese government. Upon arrival in Japan, he was taken to Tokyo Metropolitan Matsuzawa Hospital. But here's what's strange. The French government did not refer the case to the Japanese government. As a result, the Japanese government had virtually no evidence against Sagawa. After examination, Japanese psychiatrists also declared that Issei Sagawa was in excellent mental health and that the motive for his murder was purely sexual. A chain of events led to Sagawa being released from a Japanese mental hospital in August 1986, and since the government had no evidence against him, no criminal charges were brought against him. The reason why the French government did not provide evidence of a crime is beyond my understanding. As a result, Issei Sagawa was released. After his release, many documentaries were made about him, in which he participated. There were short films based on his life. He wrote a book. Some even say that the Rolling Stones song Too Much Blood is about Issei Sagawa. At the time of writing, 72-year-old Sagawa lives alone on the outskirts of Tokyo. He suffered a stroke and relies on his younger brother and social workers for his daily life. Quote by Issei Sagawa, "I hope that at least the people who read my books don't see me as a monster."